There comes a point in life when a bond with another person feels woven so deeply into our being that letting go seems impossible. It feels as if to detach would tear us apart. Carl Jung understood that true detachment is not about cutting ties violently. It is not about suppressing our feelings with coldness. Instead, it is about reclaiming the parts of ourselves we unconsciously gave away. Stepping back into the quiet ground of the self, we begin to see the other not as a fragment of our soul, but as a fellow traveler on the path to wholeness. Often, what we cling to most desperately in another is the reflection of something unrecognized within ourselves. The intensity of attachment is rarely just love or affection. It is the pull of shadow, of anima or animus, drawing us toward what we have not yet claimed within our own being. Detachment begins in recognition. When we see that we have been living through another, when we realize the fire we thought belonged to them is quietly burning within us, the grip begins to loosen. The first movement of detachment is always internal. Jung taught that real separation starts in the psyche. To detach without pain, we must withdraw the unconscious projections that bind us. We must slowly retrieve our ideals, our fears, our unspoken longings, everything we have cast upon the other. As long as these projections remain, we are not missing a person. We are missing a part of ourselves that we handed away. The work of detachment is the work of inner retrieval. It is the calling back of our own essence. We must also recognize temporality. Life flows in psychological seasons, Jung reminded us. Each relationship serves a purpose in the unfolding of individuation. To detach is not to diminish what has been shared. It is to see that its time has passed. Just as leaves fall in autumn, not because the tree has failed, but because a deeper cycle of renewal requires release, so too does the soul release attachments when their lesson is learned. By aligning with this natural rhythm, pain transforms into understanding. Detachment does not mean indifference. Love remains, but in a purified form, free from possession, free from demands. It is the movement from eros to agape, from longing to reverence. The bond does not disappear. The other remains within us, as an image of what awakened us. A memory that need not wound, but instead guides us deeper into our own wholeness. Acceptance of suffering is also key. Jung believed that consciously endured suffering leads to transformation. Pain becomes unbearable only when we refuse to accept it. By allowing grief to wash over us without resistance, the sharp edges soften. Pain becomes a teacher, not an enemy. Every attachment, no matter how consuming, ultimately points us back to our own unfinished self. We may believe we cannot live without the other, because they embody what we lack. But this is the call of individuation. To detach is to step onto the path of becoming whole. To cultivate within ourselves the strength, tenderness, imagination, and courage we once sought outside. As the work deepens, silence becomes essential. Jung emphasized the healing power of solitude. Moments of stillness allowed the scattered psyche to reorder itself. In the quiet, the pull of the old bond lessens. In the quiet, we remember, the ground of being is within us, not outside. Silence is not emptiness. It is where the self speaks. Detachment is not a violent tearing. It is a gentle unfolding. It is not repression, denial, or bitterness. It is the slow recognition that what we thought was outside has always lived within. To detach is to reclaim fragments of our soul, to thank the other for carrying them for a time, and to continue our journey with greater wholeness. It is the art of letting go without closing the heart, of releasing without forgetting, of moving forward without leaving ourselves behind. This is the beginning of understanding Jung's keys to detachment. It is not a single act. It is a lifelong practice, one that allows us to meet others without clinging, to love without fear, and to walk away without losing ourselves. And in every step, we discover that what we thought we lost has only returned home. To continue on this path, we must understand that loving oneself is not an abstract idea. It is a lived practice. Every day, the psyche presents us with choices. Choices that either affirm or betray our relationship with ourselves. When you choose silence instead of speaking your truth, you send a message inward that your voice is not worthy. When you say yes to things that exhaust your spirit, you declare to yourself that your energy is expendable and unimportant. In time, these inner betrayals form patterns. And those patterns invite people into your life who treat you the same way. Carl Jung taught that what is unconscious in us will appear outside as fate. If you do not recognize your worth, you will meet people who seem blind to it. If you deny your own needs, you will meet partners who take without giving. If you bury your inner fire, you will find yourself among those who dim your light. This is not punishment. It is reflection. The world constantly mirrors the state of your inner being. To love yourself enough is to interrupt this cycle. It is to make conscious choices that honor your being. And in doing so, you change the kinds of relationships that appear before you. Consider how self-love reshapes boundaries. A person starved for approval keeps the door of their life wide open. They tolerate neglect. They excuse cruelty. They shrink themselves for the sake of peace. But someone who has walked through their shadow and found wholeness knows that boundaries are not walls. They are invitations. They tell the world, I know who I am. I know what I deserve. And I will welcome those who respect it. The love that enters such a space is not born of fear or dependency. It is love rooted in mutual recognition. Jung's idea of individuation is essential here. Individuation is the process of becoming whole, not by rejecting the shadow, but by integrating it. When you accept your anger without letting it rule you, when you honor your sadness without drowning in it, when you recognize your pride without allowing it to control you, you become balanced. This balance is magnetic. People feel safe around those who have befriended their own shadow. Such people do not demand perfection. They understand the complexity of being human. Their love is patient, steady, and profound. When you love yourself enough, life does not become free of struggle. But struggle takes on a different quality. You are no longer lost in the chaos of needing to be completed by another. You are no longer seeking someone to heal wounds you refuse to face. Instead, you stand with both feet in your own soul. And from that rooted place, you attract others who stand firmly in theirs. This kind of meeting creates what Jung called the Konyangsho, the sacred union. Not just of two people, but of two individuated selves, who come together to create a third reality, greater than either alone. This love is unmistakable. It does not rush in with obsession, and leave with emptiness. It arrives quietly yet firmly. It grows steadily, like a tree taking root. It challenges without destroying. It supports without smothering. It recognizes difference without demanding sameness. Because it is built on the soil of self-love, it does not collapse under the weight of expectation. When you love yourself enough, you release the need to cling. Clinging is the act of a soul afraid to stand on its own. It is the cry of an unloved inner child. But once that child has been met, held, and healed by your own care, the grip loosens. You begin to trust the flow of life. You understand that love is abundant, and that you are not dependent on any one person to prove your worth. This trust makes your presence radiant. It allows love to approach you, not from desperation, but from freedom. This is how the inner act of self-love reshapes outer reality. It turns the restless search for completion into calm openness. It turns fear into trust, scarcity into abundance, loneliness into solitude filled with meaning. And from this transformed state, you attract a love that reflects not your longing, but your wholeness. This is the next step on the journey. It leads us deeper into Jung's vision of how true love emerges, only after the union within is honored. The journey deepens when we realize that self-love is not only about protecting our boundaries, or integrating our shadow. It is also about awakening to the archetypal forces that move within us. Jung saw that the human soul carries ancient patterns of love and longing, patterns that reach far beyond personal history. Within each of us is a timeless image of what it means to be loved fully, and to love fully. This inner image, Jung called the archetype of the self. The self is the center of wholeness. As we come closer to it, we begin to attract love that resonates with our deepest truth, rather than surface desires. When we have not yet encountered this inner self, we often confuse attraction with destiny. We may feel pulled towards someone who awakens intensity in us, but intensity alone is not love. It is often the friction of unresolved wounds meeting their mirror. Only when we begin to stand in the presence of the self does perception shift. We start to sense the difference between infatuation born of shadow and connection born of wholeness. Infatuation is unstable. It burns brightly, then consumes itself. But the love that mirrors the self does not fade with time. It matures. It deepens. It reveals more of life with every season. To love yourself enough is to stand as a witness to your own soul. You learn to listen to the whispers of your intuition. You honor your body when it calls for rest. You treat your inner life as sacred. These gestures may seem small, but they are acts of devotion. Every time you respect your inner world, you strengthen the channel between your conscious self and the self that holds your fullness. From this alignment, you begin to radiate a presence that calls forth people who can meet you at that depth. This kind of love is not based on roles or expectations. It is not about one person rescuing the other, or filling an emptiness. It is about two individuals, each recognized in their own center, standing side by side. The love they share is spacious. There is room for difference, room for growth, room for silence. Such a love does not demand constant reassurance, because it is not built on insecurity. It trusts, because it reflects the trust each person has cultivated within themselves. Think of how a river flows with ease when it is not obstructed. Self-love is that unobstructed flow. Without it, relationships become dams and blockages, filled with pressure and resentment. With it, relationships become currents, carrying both souls forward. This is why Jung believed the work of individuation is not selfish. It is the most generous act you can offer the world. Because when you are whole, you no longer ask others to carry the weight of your unlived life. You meet them not as a seeker of completion, but as a giver of presence. And presence is the deepest gift in love. It is the willingness to be fully here, without projection, without disguise, without fleeing into roles. The presence of a person who loves themselves enough is unmistakable. They are not perfect, they do not need to be. They are simply real, grounded, and open to the truth of their own being. This authenticity draws others, like warmth in winter. It creates relationships where masks fall away, and intimacy becomes possible. As you walk further along this path, you begin to see that self-love changes not only what kind of love you attract, but how you respond to it. Before, you may have clung to unhealthy bonds, fearing the silence that follows letting go. Now you see that letting go is not the end, but the beginning. You release what does not honor you, and trust that life will bring connections that resonate with your inner truth. This trust becomes a guiding light. And it is this light that draws love of the highest order toward you. In this way, the practice of self-love becomes a silent invitation. The world senses it without words. And the people capable of meeting you in your truth will come, not through force, not through striving, but through resonance. When they do, the love that emerges is not fragile. It is a love woven from the fabric of the self. Resilient. Profound. Enduring. There comes a point in this journey when you begin to see love not as something to chase, but as something to embody. Jung understood that the psyche longs for wholeness. Every step towards self-love is a movement in that direction. When you cultivate this inner wholeness, you no longer live with a restless hunger for validation. The frantic search quiets down, and in its place grows a calm strength. This calmness is magnetic. It draws to you people who are also rooted in themselves. The paradox is that when you stop needing love to prove your worth, you become most capable of receiving it. Before self-love, relationships often feel like survival. You cling to them because they seem to hold the key to your existence. But after self-love, relationships transform. They become spaces for growth and discovery. They are no longer desperate attempts to avoid loneliness, but conscious acts of sharing life. This shift is subtle, yet it changes everything. The love that flows from such a foundation is not heavy with demand. It is free, alive, and nourishing. Jung often warned about the danger of projection. To project is to see in another what you have not yet claimed in yourself. Many call this projection love, but it is a fragile illusion. When you love yourself enough, you begin to reclaim these lost qualities. The tenderness you admired in another lives in you. The courage you envied in someone else is also yours. The wisdom you long for is within reach. By taking back these pieces, you free the people you love from carrying your unconscious. What remains is a clearer, purer connection, based on truth, not fantasy. This kind of love is not blind. It sees with depth. It knows no human can embody every dream. It accepts imperfection, because it has already made peace with imperfection within itself. This is the essence of Jung's philosophy, to integrate the shadow rather than deny it. When you have faced your own darkness, you no longer demand purity from others. Instead, you embrace the full spectrum of their being. The love that grows from this space is tender yet strong, forgiving yet discerning. It has room for human frailty, without losing sight of human greatness. Loving yourself enough also changes the rhythm of giving and receiving. In many relationships, imbalance prevails. One gives endlessly, the other takes without end. But when you know your own worth, you do not give from emptiness. You give from abundance. Your love is not a plea for recognition, it is an overflow of your inner fullness. And because of this, it inspires reciprocity. It teaches by example that true connection thrives on mutual nourishment, not sacrifice. Think of how the sun shines without asking for praise. It gives warmth, because that is its nature. And in return, life blossoms under its light. In the same way, self-love turns you into a source rather than a seeker. Your presence itself becomes love. You attract relationships that flourish in that presence, because they too are nourished by the same abundance. This is not pride. It is authenticity. You are no longer trying to be loved, you are simply living as love. From here, something even more profound emerges. You begin to sense that love is not just between two people. It is part of a greater pattern. It is the force of life moving through you. The energy that unites opposites and creates meaning. Jung saw this as the union of conscious and unconscious, the marriage of spirit and matter. The love you attract when you love yourself enough reflects this larger union. It is not confined to romance, though it may express itself there. It is a love that affirms life itself. This is where the path leads deeper into mystery. Self-love does not only change who you attract, it changes your very understanding of what love is. What once seemed a fragile transaction between two uncertain souls becomes a sacred exchange rooted in wholeness. It is no longer about possession or fear of loss, but about sharing in the great unfolding of existence together. That is the beauty of this stage of the journey. It reveals that love is not found. It is created and sustained by two people who have each already chosen to honor the life within themselves. When you arrive here, you realize that the most profound love is not an external event. It is a reflection of the inner life you have cultivated. It is patient, steady, unshakable, because it is anchored in self-awareness. There is no need for constant reassurance, no frantic pursuit, no anxiety over whether you are enough. You are already whole. And the relationships that flourish around you simply echo that wholeness. They become mirrors, not crutches, showing the beauty and complexity of a life lived consciously. In this space, love is no longer conditional. It flows naturally from clarity, presence, and acceptance. You no longer seek to fix, change, or complete the other. Instead, you witness and celebrate their journey as you continue your own. The fear that once drove attachment dissolves, replaced by a quiet confidence in the resilience and capacity of both yourself and those you care for. Each connection becomes a conscious dance of presence and respect, a co-creation rather than a need-driven transaction. This love is both expansive and liberating. It allows you to step fully into life without carrying the weight of unfulfilled desires or imagined deficits. It encourages generosity without depletion, intimacy without dependence, joy without expectation. And in this freedom, you discover the extraordinary paradox that Jung often hinted at. To fully receive, you must first fully give. Not from scarcity, but from abundance. Not from fear, but from wholeness. Ultimately, this is the love that transforms life itself. It is subtle, yet powerful. Ordinary, yet sacred. Tender, yet unwavering. It teaches that the journey towards self-love is not a detour from connection. It is the very foundation of it. By embracing your own worth, integrating your shadow, and honoring your inner life, you open the door to relationships that are not only fulfilling, but profoundly meaningful. And so, the journey comes full circle. The love you have longed for all your life was never out there to be captured or held. It was within you all along. By choosing yourself first, by loving yourself deeply, you become capable of creating, sustaining, and sharing a love that is real, enduring, and transformative. A love that reflects the fullness of life itself.